Both leaders will now sign an historic new bilateral security agreement between the United States and Ukraine.
Good evening, everyone. Last year at the NATO summit in Lithuania, the United States brought together every member of the G7 to sign a joint declaration of support for Ukraine. 25 additional countries joined us quickly. Each agreed to forge a long-term bilateral commitments with Ukraine. President Zelensky and I have just now signed that agreement between the United States and Ukraine. Our goal is to strengthen Ukraine's credible defense and deterrence capabilities for the long term. A lasting peace for Ukraine must be underwritten by Ukraine's own ability to defend itself now and to deter future aggression anytime in the future. The United States is going to help ensure that Ukraine can do both, not by sending American troops to fight in Ukraine, but by providing weapons and ammunition, expanding intelligence sharing, continuing to train brave Ukrainian troops at bases in Europe and the United States, enhancing interoperability between our militaries in line with NATO standards, investing in Ukraine's defense industrial base so in time they can supply their own weapons and munitions, working with Ukraine's partners to build a future force that is strong, sustainable, and resilient, and supporting Ukraine's economic recovery as well as its energy recovery after Russia has repeatedly targeted Ukraine's energy grid with massive attacks in the futile attempt to break the will of the Ukrainian people. All these lines of efforts and others are laid out in this agreement. Additionally, the G7 achieved a significant outcome this week on the matter of Russia's frozen assets in Europe and other places outside of Russia. Back in 2022, 2 days after Russia's invasion, members of the G7 and the European Union worked together to freeze $280 billion in Russian central bank funds outside of Russia. I'm very pleased to share that this week, the G7 signed a plan to finalize and unlock $50 billion from the proceeds of those frozen assets, to put that money to work for Ukraine. Another reminder to Putin, we're not backing down. In fact, we're standing together against this illegal aggression. The agreement that President Zelensky and I just signed also lays out our shared vision for a just peace, a peace rooted in the UN Charter and the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, a peace with a broad base of support around the world that holds Russia accountable for the damage it has done in this war. We will see this vision strongly affirmed at the historic peace conference happening in Switzerland this weekend, where Vice President Harris will represent the United States. Finally, this agreement accelerates Ukraine's integration into the European and transatlantic communities. It includes major commitments from Ukraine to implement democratic, economic, and security reforms in line with the European Union's accession goals and NATO's programs of reform.